Malik, as the author of Sophia Khan is Not Obliged, the story of a single Muslim trying to navigate life, work and love. The book is a funny, moving novel that's really perfect for our time. It was Aisha's debut and was followed by the sequel, The Other Half of Happiness. And Aisha's latest novel, This Green and Pleasant Land, will be released in just a couple of weeks, and I can attest to the fact that it is utterly brilliant. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Next up we have actress Nina Wadia, who's renowned for her role in the timeless sketch show Goodness Gracious Me. Since then she's appeared in a wealth of stuff that you will have seen on your screens, from Still Open All Hours to Holby City to EastEnders, theatre productions, radio productions as well. On the big screen her credits include Bend It Like Beckham, which is one of my favourite films, and she starred alongside Rishi Kapoor in the Bollywood hit Namaste London. Nina's a regular presenter on ITV's Loose Women, and she's recently wrapped filming on a comedy pilot called Square Roots for ABC. So welcome to you.
Thank you.
Next we have Simon Aslam, the founder and director of Bradford Literature Festival, which takes place in less than a month, I think. Oh, okay, we won't talk too much about that. Simon's love of books and literature led her to create a cultural and literary extravaganza celebrating the written and spoken word, and it's a brilliant festival that really takes books out to people who perhaps aren't usually catered to by publishers. And unfortunately our last guest, Mariam Khan, who was due to join us tonight, is unable to do so as she's ill, so we're sending her all our best wishes, but we are delighted to be joined by Sophia Ahmed, who has worked in advertising and in the House of Commons before becoming a writer full-time. She's the author of Secrets of the Henna Girl and the founder and director of the BB Foundation, which organises tours for underprivileged and diverse people to the Houses of Parliament. So thank you all for being here tonight. So we're going to kick off very quickly with Aisha giving us one line about the book and introducing a very brief reading that Nina's going to do for us.
How many of you have read the book? Well done. Ooh. Round of applause for all of you. So Nina's going to read a part. Sophia is asked to write a Muslim dating book, and can you hear me, by the way? I don't need this Punjabi voice, that's fine. She's asked to write a dating book, and because she lives in a brown household, she never gets any peace. So her next door neighbour very kindly offers his place for her to go and do her writing, and so Nina's just going to read it out from that.
I'm very short. Saturday, 14th January, 12 p.m. Have come a bit late to Connell's, but at least he's not here. Slept through my alarm for morning prayer. I wish missing Fajr didn't form part of Naeem's return. I thought it might be a little weird that we've not spoken for weeks. I began wondering whether our conversations were as funny as I remembered them to be, or if it was just a figment of my stretched imagination. It so wasn't, apart from when he mentioned partying most nights. Not sure how much time you get to pray when you're partying, and then I realized I sounded like a boring old cow. Maybe because I am a boring old cow. 2 p.m. I want a fag. Is it unethical to smoke in your neighbour's home? 2:10 p.m. I've just tried to unlock the door to the garden and the damn thing won't open. It's just not meant to be. 2:45 p.m. Ah! Huge window in toilet. I had to stand on the toilet seat to lean out of the window with my cigarette, but I can't have his house smelling of smoke. That would be rude. I kept thinking about this partying business with Naeem. But then, what's a relationship without a few hurdles? 3 p.m. Oh, my God, my eyes keep closing involuntarily as if a small person is tugging at my eyelids. Maybe I'll have a short nap to rejuvenate. Connell's sofa does look comfortable. His washing is drying on it. Oh, a bit weird touching any boxes that might be there. Maybe I'll just have a peek. 3:02 p.m. Only T-shirts and jumpers mostly. Surely that's fine. Few minutes will have my writerly ideas flowing. 7 p.m. Balls! A few minutes turned into 3 sodding hours. I was awoken by keys rattling in the door, leapt off the sofa, whipped on my hijab, and ran to sit in front of my laptop as if I'd been writing all day. Connell came in and stared at me. "Hello!" I said brightly, as I could, to disguise the fact that I felt I was having an out-of-body experience. I was just finishing the sentence. He didn't say anything. Then something felt odd on my head. Not inside it, rather more round it. It felt as if my scarf had shrunk. I could see an odd bit dangling from the corner of my eye. Put my hand on my head and then caught a glimpse of my scarf draped over the arm of the sofa. What the hell is it doing there when it's on my head? There was a 3-second window where I was perplexed at the improbability of such a thing. And then I realized if my scarf was on the sofa, then it definitely wasn't on my head. Connell's mouth twitched. I've had girls wear my T-shirt before, but never quite like that. Thursday, 31st May, 11:45 p.m. Dad and I decided to watch Maria's wedding DVD last night. Connell cropped up every now and again, taking photos of the bride and groom. He's a nice man for letting you use his house, said Dad. Very quiet person, you know? Dad looked at me from the corner of his eye. Unless he has something to say, I replied, eyes fixed on the screen. What were you two saying there? Connell was stood behind me, and I was looking at the stage and gesticulating, which honestly I should do less of, now that I can see that I look like a puppet on strings. He's laughing, and he's taking the photos, and then he says something, can't remember what it was, and I look at my phone to check if Naeem's message, no doubt. That was the night that Naeem texted saying something about daisies. Pig. Never noticed this part of the DVD before. Note before, pay more attention to detail. Can't remember. I went to make a cup of tea and peer through the window to see if the lights were on next door. Nothing. When I sat back down, I saw Dad holding a wad of paper, and I thought, oh, what's that? Then I saw the title page with my name on the front and realized it was my bloody manuscript. Clearly I needed to have a padlock on my bedroom door. Thanks to God, Mum doesn't know how to use my laptop, or she'd be reading through my diary, asking questions like, what is a shag? Baba, it's not ready yet. I put his tea on the coffee table and rested mine on the arm of the sofa, looking at the word-studded paper. He nodded, put his glasses on, and then began turning the pages. The pages of my book. I was going to add that I'll be publishing the book under a pseudonym, so no one will know it's me, but then I realized that would beg the question as to why that matters. How much is left to do? How much have you read? All. I had to reiterate, it's not finished. Acha, it's funny. I paused the DVD, crossed my legs, and faced my dad. Really? You think so? Sofu. I have learned one thing in life, so listen, dear Baba. Nay, don't roll your eyes, you listen to me. Only do what you are happy to do. To hell with everyone else and everything else. Sometimes parents just don't know what they're saying. One minute they're begging you to stop fussing about and get married, and the next they're telling you to be autonomy activists. He handed me the manuscript. Recent lesson? I asked. Old lesson, beta. Very old, he said, before sipping his tea. But sometimes we need to remind ourselves.
Hi, Mum, by the way. She's right at the back there. You're going to be getting a few questions from her tonight, aren't I?
So as we just heard there, Aisha, in Sophia Khan, you've created a heroine of the type that don't really think we've seen in literature before, which we'll talk more about. But I'm really intrigued as to where the inspiration for her came from and for the story as a whole as well.
So I love Bridget Jones, unsurprisingly. I think that my vast wealth of experience in dating, hello Mum again, we'll talk about that later, kind of it I'd go into work and I'd tell people stories, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's so funny. Why don't you write a book about it?" And I'd be like, "Don't be silly." And then I realised that actually I wanted to write a Muslim Bridget Jones because, it was something. I think it being my debut novel as well, I did the safe thing and I wrote what I knew. So I wanted to write something that felt authentic, true to my experiences and the experiences of people around me, and also it was nice to be able to write a book about a Muslim protagonist that didn't deal with really issue-laden subjects like terrorism and oppression and kind of submission. So yeah, that's the hodgepodge of ideas that then kind of just came like a light bulb.
I'm intrigued if, for you three, like, when you first read the book or heard about the book, what was your reaction to it, and how do you feel about it? Simon, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. I mean, I'm also a big Bridget Jones fan. I probably don't have that much of a wealth of dating experience. I keep being told how boring I am. So I was sort of living vicariously through Bridget Jones, and actually reading Sophia Khan, it was actually so refreshing, because it was that thing of, a Muslim heroine who wasn't, being dragged off to do something she didn't want to do, or, it was all of those. It was actually, it just reflected the women that you see around you, the ones that actually people don't talk about, who don't make the headlines. And also, it was so funny. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think that's always like the top criteria for a book.
Well, I picked it up at the airport. Is my voice low? Should I use this? I picked it up at the airport. And I thought, oh, this has got my name, but not the surname, but it's the first name. And I was on my way to Lesbos Island at the time, in the middle of the refugee crisis, with the Syrians coming over to the Greek islands, going there as a volunteer. And I have a soft spot for the book because in between doing the voluntary work on this island, you take time out, and then I'd read the book to make myself feel better. And then, after coming back from that sort of volunteer experience, most of us came back with a chest infection. And I remember sort of, being in bed, sort of laden down with this awful chest infection, and then cackling like an old woman because it was so funny. And it just made me feel better at the time. I remember thinking, and I gave it to all my friends. So, yeah.
That's a lovely reaction to have with a book, that it kind of makes you feel better. Nina, what about you? Your experience is a little bit different because you are, as we've just heard, like, I think reading a book out loud, or reading parts of a book out loud, gives you a different sort of perspective on that.
Very much so. I mean, just to be honest, just from the extracts, you can tell that there's life beyond this. So the first thing I said to Aisha is, I can see this as a TV series. I can see this, as a movie. For sure, the heroine is she has a sense of humour, and she's normalised, and that's the thing. I've been in the profession 33 years, and trying to get cast in something that is just a bit everyday, and just, where, like you say, it doesn't have to raise every other issue in the world, and it's just about being a human being. One of my biggest things, so when I joined EastEnders, there was an actress who was a very dear friend of mine called Janet Dibley, who'd gone in before that, and I remember years ago she'd gone in and she was playing an alcoholic, and so she said to me, she says, "What's your character like?" And I said, hang on a minute. I thought, you were given a breakdown for your character? She goes, yeah. I said, so what were you told? She says, oh, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a single mother, I'm this, I'm that. And I'm going, I was just told I'm Muslim. That's it. So you kind of go, but that's happened so much in my career, like where if you're not white, you will get scripts that will focus in on your religion as opposed to anything about your actual character. And then all the rest I have to invent, because I don't get the privilege of being given the other bits.
Maybe that's why when we see them on screen, they aren't usually very well rounded.
No, they're not. Yeah. They're not. And so when the Enders opportunity had come up for me, I had to make damn sure that I had someone that was all rounded. I wanted to make her someone that was funny, was quite dark, was quite strong. Like, you had to just give all the other elements, because I don't think when it comes to especially Muslim characters in this country, 9 times out of 10, it's more about their politics and their religion than it is about their character. So that's why this book's refreshing, genuinely.
I'm intrigued as to what kind of pop culture you guys were consuming growing up, and whether you saw any character that looked remotely like you in those instances, and whether if you did, when you think about it now, that character was very much a stereotype. Like, was there anything that...
From my childhood, there was Mind Your Language.
Okay.
Which was really bad.
Okay.
But we were still excited because it was Asian people on TV. So, but no women.
Okay.
No women at all.
Goodness gracious me.
Yes.
Obviously, groundbreaking for its time. Oh God, there was another series with in Peckham or Brixton, black hairdresser.
Desmond. Yeah.
Oh, I remember watching that, and I just loved that.
That was really good.
Yeah. Those are my two kind of memories of.
I think for, like, I remember my mum watching the Art Malik one, the...
Oh, yes. The kidnapping...
whatever it was called, and that was about...
Jewel in the Crowd?
Jewel in the Crowd. So...
I think it's interesting, because I think, and actually if you think of books, and the kind of gap that Sophia Khan is sort of plugging, there was nothing. I remember being really... And I'm like a really avid reader. Like, I love reading. But I remember as a child being really put off by any of the books that had kind of like Asian characters in them, because they were like so worthy. They were like, there was always like something going on with them that was just like not very exciting, and I felt that the books were quite dull. I never wanted to read them, and it's like one of the conversations. I think there's so much conversation publishing now around, diverse writers and diverse voices and making sure people are reflective, which is all great. But actually, if you write books that are exciting, so I always talk about the Percy Jackson books.
Oh yeah.
Don't know, sorry, I kind of haven't grown up, so I'm still reading all the kids' books. But those books they are just so exciting, and there are so many diverse characters in them, and you do not think about the fact that they are diverse. You just read these books because they are absolutely amazing, and that's what tends to be missing. And I think with Sophia Khan, actually anybody can read it. It is just so funny, and I think that's the balance that is lacking. And when I look back, I can't think of any books that I was really reading where I sort of felt I saw anything reflected.
And just touching on what Simon said about the diversity thing, even though there's a huge push in publishing for diversity, they all seem to be with books, again, that are issue-laden. So you're ticking the boxes of diversity while not actually diversifying the characters, because it's all, again, the same kind of subjects that we've grown up with. So, just a little add-on to that.
Boxes, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I thought, so you said at the beginning when you were talking about the inspirations for the book, and I thought this was really interesting and really important about that you wanted to write something authentic to you, and I wondered if ever during the writing, or if people have been surprised by it, in that I think sometimes publishing can say, oh, that's not authentic, because what is authentic is actually lots of women wearing scarves over their head and not speaking to anybody and just spending all their time in the kitchen or whatever the case might be. And I wondered if you'd had any of that reaction where people were surprised by it?
I do. Whenever I start talking about the book, I do always give the caveat that this is just one story of a Muslim woman. This is not every Muslim woman's story. So when I talk about being bored by books about honor killings and terrorism, that's not to say that this stuff doesn't happen. So I'm very careful to kind of caveat that. In terms of authenticity, I mean, I can say it's authentic, but I have had readers. Actually, one of my library events, a reader said to me, I was reading this, and she just doesn't sound like a Muslim woman. This isn't how Muslim women are. So it just goes to show how many kind of stereotypes you have to be breaking. So, and then other people have said, oh, it's really subversive, which is interesting, because to me it's not subversive. To me it's kind of the norm, and yet people's reaction to it just shows that they're used to a certain branding, and anything different to that is inauthentic. I did have a Muslim man leave a review on Goodreads saying she's not represented Muslim women the way they are. He's obviously not dated very widely. There we are.
And what about you? Have either of you ever felt that in your work or even in your personal lives? Is the kind of, if you're encountering people and they're like, oh, well, you are not what I thought an Asian woman would be like, or...
Yeah, I think, because I don't wear the hijab and I say I'm Muslim, I've had so many people say, especially in my political background, with my political background is, you're all right, and you're not like them. And you think, do you just realise what you've said to me? That you're saying to me that your perception of what a Muslim woman is. So, yeah, you do get that, all these stereotypes that you do come across. when I did a City Reads event at Richmond, which I just wanted to mention, and I met all these lovely, she organised it, met these lovely audience members, ladies, older ladies, and they were gushing about Sophia Khan. They were saying, oh, it's so funny, and they were all recommending the sequel as well, saying, we have to get the other one, we have to get the other one.
One of the biggest surprises has been how much old people seem to really like the book.
But really, what came across was the
aside from my mum, it took a year to read it, so... You're not old, Mum. Sorry.
It was almost like they're surprised at it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's really good. Are you sure? Really? Oh, I must read it. And we have to get the sequel as well. And it's like, why are you shocked that this is good?
But then I suppose if what you're seeing on screen, so we had this, was it last year, was it earlier this year, with Bodyguard, and kind of, still in 2019, what you are seeing on screen is a representation of a very stereotyped kind of Muslim woman, and we had this discussion where I started very late, and I was like, oh guys, I've switched it on and I've switched it off after 10 minutes because there's a Muslim woman who's a terrorist on a train. Is the whole thing like this? And everyone was like, no, it's really subversive. And then it turned out it wasn't really subversive.
You did the right thing,
I was like, well.
I think the producers thought they were being really clever, and the writers, because they'd made her submissive in the start, that, she was this victim. And in the last scene, she was like, I'm the engineer that did it all, I'm the one that built the bomb.
But I watched a similar program 15 years ago on Channel 4 about like a female suicide bomber in the UK.
But it was really funny because Bodyguard came out at the same time as Killing Eve, which was great fun. And I thought, that character Villanelle, the Russian assassin, is more realistic than a Muslim woman bomber, I think.
That's because she got the script and was told that she's just Muslim.
Talking of terrorism, one of my favourite bits of Sophia Khan is kind of quite near the beginning when she's on the tube and somebody calls her a terrorist. And like all of us, I think in any situation, you think of a comeback kind of a little bit after, but she manages her comeback just in time, and she leans out of the car and she shouts about how a terrorist wouldn't wear designer shoes. Her language is her phraseology is a little more colourful than mine. Why did you want to insert humour into those kinds of things? Words that will hurt people, that do hurt people, but turning that around and kind of trying to put a different spin on it.
Namely because once I was called a terrorist, and I, unlike Sophia Khan, didn't have a comeback. But once he had walked past me, first of all, he said, I heard terrorist, and my first reaction was, oh gosh, where? and then
very calm reaction.
Yeah, I was like, where? And then he walked past, and I was like, oh, because there was no one around me, and this was in Tooting of all places, and I was like, I'm really sorry for people who have been to my talks and already heard me say this story, but I'm not that inventive. I have to tell the same stories over and over again. And then obviously I realised that he'd meant me, and he walked past me, and I was like, it just knocks you, that kind of comment knocks you sideways, because you don't go around thinking that you're brown and Pakistani and Muslim. You just go around being who you are. And then I looked at my shoes, and I was genuinely wearing vintage shoes that day, and I was like, hang on, terrorists don't wear vintage shoes. And it was a thought that occurred to me, and so I felt it needed to go in the book.
Sophia is you. No, you wish you'd been in that moment.
Yes, exactly.
Like in that particular.
Absolutely.
In that particular moment.
Yeah, she's a lot quicker than I am. I have time to come up with responses. She doesn't. Humour forms a huge part of the book. I always wanted it to be funny. I'd conceived it as a Muslim Bridget Jones, so it needed to have that humour interweaved into it. And I think also first of all, comedy is an excellent vehicle to kind of bridge gaps of understanding. No one wants to be lectured to. No one wants to be told what to think. So if you can use comedy as a vehicle to kind of engage people, I think it's one of the best ways of bridging those gaps. Second of all, I do talk about quite dark things and kind of social issue-laden things, but I never wanted it to be worthy, like those books that you used to read, because or that you didn't read. I didn't want it to be worthy, and I think comedy is a perfect way to kind of, and it's something I learned in my creative writing MA as well. If you're going to bring some darkness to a book, then where is the light? And it's about shading in the scenes that you write with both of those.
I mean, Nina, you're well known for kind of the comedy work you did in your earlier career. Do you agree with that? And how
Entirely.
do you see the kind of work that you did and what
It's how Goodness Gracious Me came about. So my lead into Goodness Gracious Me, I in my younger days, I wanted to change the world. So my growing up is sort of, I did actually grow up all over the world. My dad was with the airline, so I have lived everywhere, and I chose England when I was 19 to go to drama school. And I co-wrote a show a few years later called Do You Eat With Your Fingers? And that came about because I was the only brown person at a table with white friends. We'd gone to a restaurant, and I was the only one not given cutlery by a brown waiter. And I went, where's my cutlery? And he went, huh? You eat with your fingers? So I thought, that's a great name for a show. Do you eat with your fingers? So I'd come up with this thing, and the producers of Goodness Gracious Me saw the show and said, oh, we would like you on board. We're doing a show called Peter Sellers is Now Dead, which we didn't get permission to use because his wife took offense. It was actually in honor of Peter Sellers because we thought he was the only white man who did brown really well. But instead we called it Goodness Gracious Me, and in that we wanted to basically, it was our way of promoting some kind of change without ramming a message down people's throats. We just wanted to use humor. Humor is a universal language, and what we wanted to do was to make sure that that translated to people to say, just because you're brown doesn't mean you can't be funny. And I'm hoping that that actually did open doors for a lot of people, a lot of different actors. You know, there's huge changes, and it's taken time, but there are huge changes. There are more changes to come. Yeah, as far as the humor side of things is concerned, I think that is a very good forward step because it is a language a lot of people will get one way or the other. You will, sadly, suffer a lot of backlash as well. Playing a Muslim woman on EastEnders, I remember the casting director saying to me, are you okay playing Muslim? And I remember at the time thinking, what an odd thing to say. And then actually, there was a massive backlash from the Muslim community for me, which was incredibly hurtful. But you just kind of, you get a thick skin. You get a thick skin about it, and you just carry on. And you go, well, that's my craft. That's what I've created. If you have a problem with it, you have a problem with it. There was one very horrific incident, which I don't mind sharing with you guys, but and it was actually from the Muslim community, which upset me. We were filming a scene in the Argy Bargy. I don't know if any of you know the show, but there's the Argy Bargy, and the roof collapses in it, and it was a night shoot, which is unusual for EastEnders, but we did the filming. There was ash in my hair, and all of my clothes from the filming, we obviously didn't actually burn it down, but it was just the stuff, and our porter cabins, which are our dressing rooms, are not very glamorous on EastEnders, and I just wanted to get home and rinse off. So I put these garbage bags in my car and got in the car, and I had very little petrol, and I thought, oh, I hate filling petrol last thing at night, but fine. Going back through Watford, where we film, there's these 3 petrol stations at the junction, and I always go into the Sainsbury's one, and the lady kind of waved to me, and it's coming to closing time, it's coming up to midnight. So I just waved to her, got out the car, and as I got out the car, this car screeched up opposite my petrol pump, and it was 3 Muslim guys, one of whom looked over and went, hey, Masood's wife, yeah? Like this. I thought, oh, I really don't have the energy for this. I went, yeah, nice to meet you, and I turned, started to fill petrol. But, you have a female instinct, and I thought, oh, these are not nice guys. There's something about them I don't like. So I instinctively just kind of thought, just put in a $5, enough to get me home, fill. And luckily the woman in the actual Sainsbury's petrol station caught my eye. And she signalled to me, and I thought, okay. So I go in to put the pump in, but by then, one of them had come straight up to me on one side, and he went, you're not really Muslim, are you? I went, what? He goes, you're not really Muslim, are you? I said, no, I'm an actress. Because I thought, I don't want to get into the discussion of it, I don't want to get into the conversation of it. I said, why, what's your issue? And he went, no issue, I just think it's really sick, yeah? You're representing Muslim people when you're not actually Muslim, yeah? That's disgusting. And then he spat on me. And I thought, wow, you're pleasant. And at that point, he puts his arm around my shoulder, so he's here, arm like this, and he's holding me, and he says to his friend, take a photo with her, yeah? Take a photo. And all my instincts kicked in, and I just elbowed straight into the ribs, and I ran towards the petrol station door. She'd opened the door for me, I got in, we shut the door, and they were slamming it. and then you heard sirens because she'd already called the police. And that was my experience. That was a very negative experience. And so for me, I was upset because I have a lot of Muslim friends, in fact, we have Muslim family. And I just thought, that was really wrong. Because actually what I'm doing is I was trying to have some kind of representation of that, because I didn't think, this was around the time when the terrorism thing was really fresh and new, and it was all over the UK. And so I, in my naivety, thought, well, there won't be, why would that affect me, playing a Muslim woman? But it did. So that was sadly unpleasant. By the same token, a lot of my fan mail was amazing, and from the Muslim community saying, thank you for representing, thank you for, just so that we even have a platform to talk about Muslim women in particular, because I played a very strong woman, and I fought for that with the producers, because I wanted her to be a strong woman. Because initially, a lot of people don't know that she was brought into the show as a single mother with a daughter. And 6 months in, playing a woman who worked at the post office, I turned to the producer and I went, why am I a single woman with a daughter? Why do I not have a full family? I should have several husbands and others. Should at least, very handsome husband, and lots of children. Why? And they were like, well, we haven't established that you're a single woman, mum. And that's when the family came in, because I pushed for that. I wanted the Masouds to be a successful family on that show, because that show has never had representation in a proper way. So we just brought in, and I brought in comedy with it, because comedy, like I've said, is a universal language. And that was my experience. That's one of my many positive and negative experiences of that show. But that was most prominently playing a Muslim woman, and it opened my eyes to a lot of what was going on in the country. And it was saddening, and at the same time it was very eye-opening, and also positive things came out of it. And the whole gay Muslim storyline, that was something I fought for. Because I have a gay Muslim friend who was married, divorced, and then is now single, but still isn't out to his parents. He's still at 52 not out to his parents, which I find hilarious, but that's his choice, and I respect that, and that's what he needs to do. But I wanted to have a story in there. So the fight for that was huge. And then the story took off, and it actually did a lot of good, because we had an arc with it, where she had to learn a few truths, as a woman had to learn a few truths about her religion and her son. So a lot happened with that show. But I think it was important, hugely important.
I think that kind of illustrates the lack of danger, the danger there is in a lack of representation, both for the people who are being represented in books or on TV or on film, and also the people seeing that representation as well, who are from outside of those perhaps cultures or religious experiences or whatever it might be. And I think one thing, kind of moving on from that, the representation of Muslim women as feminists, and a discussion that I hear quite a lot is like, well, a woman that wears a hijab can't be a feminist because that piece of clothing is an oppressive piece of clothing. But Sophia Khan does wear a hijab, and I think she is a very feminist character. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that, and kind of if you guys can chime in with kind of your experiences is this, and I mean your essay is not about the burqa, it's called The First Feminist, and it is about an amazing Muslim woman that perhaps most of us haven't heard of. So if we kick off with you. I didn't consciously write her as a feminist. It was just a byproduct of who she was as a person. And I love the fact that people have come back to me and said, oh, this is a feminist rom-com. And that's how they've kind of described it, and I think that's great. And I think, part of the problem is we don't have enough representation, and actually the idea of feminism is kind of rooted in our religion, that people don't really understand and don't really know about, and that's why writing books like this and understanding that's kind of rooted in our tradition is really important for people to understand.
It's a matriarchal culture, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something that actually I find Islam has in common with England as a whole. I think England's a very matriarchal society, and there's a lot of humour that comes from that. There are strong women behind all the men, and I think that's lovely that comes across in the book.
Talk about first feminist.
No, tell us a little bit about who you've written about in that.
So in the book, it's not about the burqa. My essay is titled The First Feminist, and I wanted to talk about my role model, who has been my role model since I was about 10 or 11. And it's the Prophet's first wife, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his first wife, Khadija, who was a very strong, empowered businesswoman. And I was given this book by my dad when I was about 10 or 11. And it just changed everything, because up until then, I had bought into this whole culture that we have, which is that, you can do things as a Muslim girl, as a Muslim woman, but, you're always going to come second to your husband in a way. You're always going to be kind of owned by your father, your husband eventually, and then in old age, your adult son. You're never going to really be independent. But this book, and it was written in Urdu, this was the 80s, I'm quite old, and I had to learn Urdu because, Muslims speak it in India, so this book was given to me by my dad. And, the fact, up until then, I hadn't really realised who she was. And it changed everything, because now I had a historical figure from my own religion. And the fact that she existed meant that I could exist as I wanted to as well, that I could be a feminist. And all of that was in complete contradiction to everything that my culture tried to teach, which was that, all the issues that we do have. And it's a very patriarchal culture. I mean, it's quite interesting that you say it's matriarchal, but for me, it's patriarchy. South Asian patriarchy is there. And what I try to argue in the essay is, for me, culture is fluid. I did, we've done a few panels on this book, and I could talk about the fact that Muslim women are independent, that we should be allowed to wear the burqa if you want, and someone will say, oh, but what about the women in Iran, and what about the women in Saudi? And what I say is, I'm talking about British Muslim, British Muslim women. I can't speak for the Iranian women, and I can't speak for the Saudis. I'm interested as a British citizen in the kind of influence and change that we can have in our society here. And culture is fluid. It changes all the time. It doesn't have to be just because we transferred it in the 1950s or 1960s, when our grandparents came here. And for a lot of them, it's kind of stuck. But we don't have to continue with that. We can change it, and it's all about us changing it, our generation changing it, and talking about it and writing about it.
And because I also think there's a difference between culture and religion, and sometimes the two get intertwined in ways that aren't very healthy. And Summer, I wondered if I could come to you on this, because with Bradford Literature Festival, obviously you're in a city that has a huge Asian population, that was kind of one of the places that a lot of immigrants first came to and settled in, along with cities like Birmingham and Sheffield and some other northern cities. And so when you program the events at Bradford, kind of how are you striking that balance between things that are about the culture and the religion that a lot of people in the city kind of have or follow, because you want to draw them in as audiences as well. You're not trying to create a festival that is just for wealthy, middle-class white readers. You are trying to create a festival for everyone, and then kind of what's the reaction to the stuff that you've created over the past few years?
I've actually found the reaction to the festival really interesting. I mean, it's really gratifying to create a festival and have people say how amazing it is and how inspiring they're finding it. However, I'm slightly bemused that should be the case. So when I set the festival up, and I was thinking about the programming, I wanted to create something that reflected the city. So that was, and obviously Bradford is known fondly as Bradistan, and we have a 30% South Asian population, most of which is now mainly Pakistani, but we have an Eastern European community, etc., etc. And I thought, I'm very much like, you do something, you do it well, let's take it up there. So when I was talking about the festival, I thought, okay, if we reflect Bradford, then actually we're talking to the rest of the UK, and then we're talking internationally, etc., etc. So I suppose what I did was I did something that to me felt instinctively right. But what was interesting to me was, so initially when I was setting the festival up and I sort of had this conversation about it, I was told by someone, oh, that's fantastic, because you know what, we've got this other festival over here and they've got a white middle class audience. So if you create this festival for a South Asian literature festival, that would be great. And I think I find it fascinating that people still talk to me and they will automatically assume, because of the way I look, this must be a South Asian literature festival. I've had people say to me, well, are there many Indian writers? And funnily enough, you might find there are, although they're not the only ones we get. So there's been things like that, but like I said, while the reaction has been great in the sense of everybody saying how great this festival is and how it's really diverse and it's, it's really great to see all these different things, that shouldn't actually be the case. We should... Bradford is great, and Bradford is reflective of the city that it's in, and so we get all these diverse audiences, but actually given the UK as a whole, and I'm not from the culture sector as a background, that should not be the case in the culture sector. It shouldn't be the case that this one festival comes along and everybody's talking about it. Like I said, really gratifying for me because I've created it, but these things should be happening anyway. When you go to all these other festivals, it's not what I'm doing is not rocket science. I'm doing it because that's my background, and I'm British and I'm Asian, and it all blends together. And I think that's kind of the festival is a little bit of an extension of my head, so it all kind of blends together. But what I find quite interesting is from a few conversations I've had, and I sort of think I had two conversations that really stayed with me. And I think probably because they were in the same day. So I had breakfast with someone, and this person said to me, I'm so inspired by what you've done in Bradford. And I said, oh, thank you, that's really great, blah, 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 But I thought, and he said to me, and because you've done this, I think I might be able to do something like this. And I thought...
It's like when you write a book and people are like, I can write a book.
Yeah, but it was like, I thought somebody like you is saying that to me. So I was kind of like, that you're kind of like up there. And then I had the same kind of conversation with an artist later that night, and she said to me, I'm so inspired by what you've done because we're constantly having to sort of think about how we program things that are about our culture and and I think what really struck me was I thought, okay, because I thought about it on the train home that night because it sort of stayed with me, and I thought, doing what I did in Bradford, I didn't ask anybody for permission. I didn't say, can I create a festival that looks like this? I just did it. And in my enthusiasm went along and said, I'm doing this festival, it's going to be great, and it's going to be like this. And because I wasn't asking for permission, it actually took that shape naturally. And then everybody else is saying, that's great. But I thought, actually, if anybody tried to create that kind of thing in that sector by asking, can I do it and do it like this, it probably wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, so I think Sophia Khan's a little bit like that. So I want to, I'm conscious that we've not got lots of time left, so I wanted to kind of turn the discussion to love and romance for the last bit. And I think one of the things...
Who knows anything about that?
I think one of the things that the book does really well is, and we have spoken about this, is create a romantic heroine. And I think in kind of all forms of pop culture, we're not used to seeing people of colour as desirable and desired and desiring of love as well. And I wondered how conscious you were about the fact that there really, how many other books can you name that have got love stories that feature characters of colour that aren't about arranged marriage or forced marriage or some kind of trauma of some sort?
I think part of that, it wasn't a conscious decision. Again,
you just did it without, like you said, without asking permission.
Exactly. And if I had asked permission, then it probably would have been a very different book. Which is when you were saying that, I was thinking about that. And part of it was to do with the fact that I've grown up loving romantic comedies, and I used to watch. I watched romantic comedies. Ask my family and friends. I watched romantic comedies all the time. I didn't used to read as many books, romantic comedy books, as I did like watch romantic comedy films, and it was just a natural extension of that. A lot of people have asked me, did you consider how dangerous, not dangerous, but did you consider what you were actually writing when you were writing it? And I say no, because if I had, then I would have thought about my mum who's falling asleep in the back, and how she'd be reading it, or the ending as well. People asked whether that's something that I wanted, or whether it's something. Did my publisher want something different? So it was really, I just wrote the book. I didn't have a contract. I didn't have a publisher or an agent. So I just wrote the book that I wanted to write. And I think that if I had started worrying about what the conservative Muslim community would think, or what the non-Muslim community would think, when I was writing about polygamy, then it just would have it just wouldn't have had that kind of freshness, I think.
So where you said that you were writing the book that you wanted to write, were you also writing the book that you wanted to read?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I wanted to
Not
write.
read it,
I know. I wanted to write the book that everyone wanted to read.
Okay.
And I did have the same problem as Simon growing up when I was reading books. I didn't, all the kind of Asian characters were kind of same, one-dimensional, arranged marriages, that kind of thing.
Oh, we've got like a very famous children's author at the moment whose Asian character is shopkeeper, got the corner shop.
Yeah.
We'll have to ask you afterwards. Yeah. I wondered with the two of you, how much of kind of the art that you create is the art that you wanted to see kind of growing up, or even now on screen, like the roles you take are the roles that you would like to watch even if you weren't playing those parts?
Well, I didn't have a lot of role models from the Indian background growing up, apart from Bollywood films where I could tell you. But, so I actually, the people I grew up watching were Eddie Murphy, watching Raw at the age of 12, which I was not allowed to do, and sneaking and watching it, and Robin Williams, and Joan Rivers was the only female, so I kind of wanted to play white Jewish, which wasn't going to happen. But for me, kind of the whole role model thing was very, very difficult. There wasn't really anything there, but I did know that I wanted to do comedy. That's something that I knew that was going to be part of my whole sort of growing up and all of that. So yeah, that was pretty much it. So it was tough. It was kind of tough, kind of paving the way, because we still get scripts sent where I'll go up for casting, especially in the States, and it'll say Janet or something, then it'll say could be black or Asian in the little column there, and you go, wow. So it's like, well, we're going for BAME. We wanted to have representation. I'm going, it's great that you want representation, but how about you actually just write a part that actually could be for us without saying, it could be black or Asian. So it'd be nice if we could get to the next stage of that.
I think apart from the personal religious role model, my other role model was an actress in Bollywood called Zinata Aman. I don't know if you...
Oh, she's a beautiful woman, yeah.
She had these amazing, feisty, I don't know if they were quite young here, but must be somebody who remembers Zinata Aman. Yeah. She did these amazing roles. Like, this was a time, 80s and 90s, where Bollywood was just full of, action, macho men. But she gave as good as rest of them. She wasn't meek, she wasn't submissive. She was there with her. And all the time, I used to think her wigs were her own hair. She'd have one scene, she'd have short hair, then she'd have long hair, and I'd be like, how did she manage it?
I'll tell you one very funny story from the Bollywood thing, where I did this sort of comedy moment, and the director came up to me and he went, can you make it bigger? Just make the comedy moment bigger, otherwise I can't do the doing. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. What did you say? He goes, I can't do the doing. So are you saying I can't do the doing? Is that what you're saying? He goes, yeah. If you don't do the comedy moment big, how can I do the doing? I thought, am I going mad here? So I don't understand what that means. Akshay Kumar was the leader. He takes me to one side. He goes, the sound when you do comedy in Bollywood film, they have to put a doing at the end of it. I said, he goes, otherwise how will he know it's comedy? So yeah, that was my experience on Namaste Lama.
I think brilliant. Me would have been very different.
Would have been very different. Every single
I think every brand person should be using that in their household now.
What about the doing?
And the second part of yours was the art that we do now. But I think my books are a reflection of my political activism. So I'm afraid I'm one of those people that is actually writing about forced marriage and terrorism and the issues.
But that is part of a I think the important thing is that is an important part of existing within like a wider canon.
It comes down to there isn't a single story. Yeah. So if I'm doing my bit and you're doing your bit, and there should be like 100 other.
And the thing is, there needs to be room for everyone. Whereas I feel there's only really kind of maybe 5% room for the other stories. Whereas publishers gravitate towards stories.
But you see, what publishers do is, and I've spent a few years in publishing, but if you sit down with a publisher, they will say, okay, when I read this, I need to be a middle class, middle England person, and if I can't relate to it, then the market's not going to relate to it. So you need to write it for the middle class, middle England, which means you just have to explain everything. If you say achha, that means yes, okay. Everything has to be explained. So the stuff, like you said, they're only leaving it for 5% of the other stories that we want. And at the end of the day, I think it's just a reality that if issues are topical, they want books on it. And that is hopefully something that's going to change while we try to get, but the change will come not just with the authors, but people in publishing roles.
Yeah.
So you yourself have a role at, do you still have it? Yeah. So, I mean, in the publishing industry, I don't know if TV
It's
is
the same in the
it's
acting
just
industry. If you're
upper middle class white people at the top who will make these decisions. And frankly, I think it's great that your publisher took this on, but most people will go.
And this was 4 years ago when it was the whole diversity conversation had only kind of begun, and so I guess they took a bit of a thank you, Bonnier.
Speech here for Bonnier.
Yeah, speech here for Bonnier.
I think it's interesting though. There is a thing about who's allowed to write what, and I think the thing is with BAME writers, there's quite a narrow category about what you're allowed to write. I find people like Alexander McCall-Smith fascinating because he can write the voice of a 6-year-old boy, he can write Mama Ramotswe, he can write Isabel Dalhousie, and he's allowed to write every single one of those voices and nobody questions it. But I find it interesting that if you get a BAME writer and they write a voice that is not theirs, it's a question in a way that I don't think it is for some other writers. I think that in
that's
itself
the reality.
That's a really interesting dynamic. But the change actually has to come from within the publishing industry as well. Because at the moment there's a lot of we need more.
And also now BAME writers choosing to write outside the scope of what they know. So I did the very typical thing of writing what I know, but hopefully
but in a very different way.
Yeah. Well, thank you. But yeah.
Yeah, also genre writing. We've got great, is it Wasim Khan, all doing crime novels. You've got Abra Mukherjee, and they're award-winning as well. So it doesn't matter that this writer has got this ethnic name or these Asian characters. It's the story that people are relating to.
But it does matter. The name matters because, and actually, an author friend of mine, who shall remain nameless, but he had a meeting with a friend of his, a white, very successful self-published author, and they did a little experiment. It's a small community, we all know each other. And he did a little experiment, and they used a white surname for a name for a book, and saw what the audience reaction to it was. And you know who I'm speaking about. So he's obviously told the story to more people than me. And they did the same with his name, and there was a huge dip in interest for the book, and it was purely because of his name, which sounded funny, I guess, or non-relatable. So there are so many various barriers that we need to kind of get through.
Those barriers start in school, because my book is YA, so I do lots of school visits, and I've spoken about this too quite a bit, where you walk into a library and there's a display stand, and you've got LGBT books, and there's another display stand, and you've got BAME books, and what they don't seem to realize, what is actually happening is you're othering these writers and these characters. The whole point of a book, a story, is you pick it up, you read it, and you feel empathy, you walk in their shoes, and you think, oh, okay. But unless you're a child who is trying to explore their sexuality, you're not going to go to the LGBT stand because it's, LGBT, or you're not going to go to the BAME. But you could be any pupil just browsing through the shelf, and you think, oh, this looks interesting from the blurb, read it, could be about a gay character, and just appreciate the story, and like what the Birmingham school people think at the moment, which is that they're all going to. We might talk about that. But that starts in school, And I spoke a couple of weeks ago at this other event where all these librarians were there, and I said, you're othering. We've already got segregation in our country, and you're starting it in school because you're not giving. I said, do a genre stand, do a mystery one. Put all the best ones on, and then put the new. Give equal billing.
So where is your book placed in a bookshop? Like, do you know? Because that's another thing with like in a bookshop. Is it in the romance section, or is it in?
Or is it? I don't know if it's in a bookshop anymore.
I actually went to a festival, and I found it fascinating that they had their Indian summer bit, and everything from cookery through to whatever by somebody who was a BAME writer was actually in that. And that's the thing, I mean, sort of running a festival, I find it fascinating because you can look through programs, it's like, here's the LGBT event, and here's the BAME event, and then they've done.
Yeah,
and I think that's
it,
what's been really different about Bradford, because
Yeah.
that isn't the primary thing when you're actually programming, and suddenly people find it like really mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of time, so I do have more questions, but I'm going to open it up to the audience now. So we do have, I think this mic works. So who's got the first question? Don't be shy, everyone is
Come on.
very lovely.
I'll be really disappointed if no one has any questions.
Maybe your mum will confess.
My mum's not allowed to ask any questions.
Who's going to go first?
I wondered, I'm a massive romantic comedy fan, and I married an Indian guy some years ago and spent a couple of years living in India and was devastated at the lack of romantic comedy writing that I could read there. And I discovered an absolute lifeline, the woman, she was called Moni Rosin.
Oh, the butterfly.
She's so pretty.
She's amazing.
She's so wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said her name, because a lot of people haven't heard of her.
I keep talking about her to everyone. I keep saying, and you must read The Butterfly.
She has all three of the
Yeah.
butterflies.
Yes.
So amazing, and I wanted to just kind of echo what you said, and I think there's so many different types of writing, because she wrote in a way which was utterly kind of foreign to me,
Yeah.
so I imagine, and I picked it up and it's like,
And yet she's compared to kind of Jane Austen, isn't she?
oh,
Yeah.
she is astoundingly gifted, I think, and what I think your work and her work have in common is a tremendous, very funny, but the pace and the lightness of touch, and I think it's so undervalued in women's writing across all ethnicities and across all genres, and I think women do it particularly well, and Helen Fielding does it very well. It's the pace and the lightness of touch and the genuine feeling of, I really want this, I want this girl to get what she wants, and this ability to kind of draw people in, and I just wanted to share that, I guess.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. Thank you.
Long question.
There's a hand right at the back. I know who that
Oh no,
belongs to.
it's my 7-year-old niece. Aww.
What does romantic mean?
Ask your mum and dad. Yeah, go home and ask your mum and dad. They'll tell you. It's to do with love, darling.
And what does general mean?
Sorry?
What does general mean?
We'll have this conversation when we get home, shall we? She just wants the mic. She loves the mic.
So if a 7-year-old has asked a question, I now expect everybody. So there's a hand up over here.
I love the book. I've read it, and I'm buzzing for many reasons. I'm finding it difficult to curb my enthusiasm.
Oh, thank
Just
you.
a comment. I'm from Tooting, same hometown
Yay.
as you. I know many Bridget Jones, and I completely relate to the fact that representation matters for the Muslim community as well. Muslim Bridget Jones is amazing. I know so many people that this will touch a note with. What I find fascinating is not only the fact that you lightly covered so many controversial topics, but the fact that you've not written in continuous prose. So what ignited or what directed you towards writing the diary script? Time slots? Just
lack of imagination. Anyone who's a Bridget Jones fan and who's read the books will know that that's exactly how she writes. So I basically stole the conceit, just added a Muslim in there, and I copied her structure. And I think a lot of people have had a very different reaction to it, because some people love it and some people hate it because it's bitty and it lacks kind of fluidity. But for me, when I was reading Bridget Jones initially, and I've read it several times, both of the books, I love the timestamps, even though it's not really realistic, because how many people actually sit down and write in their diary every 3 minutes. But for me, it was part of the whole entertaining, real-time account that you're getting of this person's life, and I wanted to. I guess Sophia Connor's a bit of an homage to that as well, because it has such a fond place in my memory and my heart.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
To do that, you have to be really, really talented and really funny.
Yes, and that as well, of
Yeah.
course.
Which is, as a writer, I can tell you, it's really tough to do that, because diary entries are boring unless you're making it funny.
Yeah.
So as a writer, it's much easier to do sort of, a bit on setting, a bit on description, and you get there. But to do that, you're very talented.
Oh, thank you.
I would also add that it's very difficult to be funny on the page.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't often translate.
Yeah, no, I was worried.
Hilarious.
Thank you. I was worried about that when I was writing it because I was chuckling to myself and I was like, is anyone else going to actually find this funny? And thankfully they have.
Great.
Next. I have another question. Oh. Okay. Do you have any tips for budding writers?
Oh, no, that's okay.
Budding writers who want to write with similar topics to yours or genre to
Yeah.
yours, what tips or advice would you give them?
So my general piece of advice is what I was given when I started writing, which is finish the first draft. Don't go back, don't edit, just write the story, and when you read it back it will be awful. Inevitably it will be crap and you will despair, but what you've got there is the foundation of the story that you want to tell, and then go back and edit. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is when you're in the flow of a scene or when you're writing and it's going really well, then just kind of stop in the middle of the scene or middle of a sentence, so that the following day when you come back to it you're not staring at a blank page, because the blank page is the writer's worst nightmare, because how do you begin? So those are two tips that I found really handy. And also with my first book I didn't have any kind of structure planned. I didn't know what was going to happen really, and the plot changed kind of 50, 60 pages in. So the second and third books that I've written, and I'll talk a bit about the third book actually.
Which is amazing.
Thank you. I structured those stories before actually writing them, because it just gives you a sense of momentum, a sense of pace, what's wrong with the structure, what needs more conflict and what tension. So planning beforehand for me is really helpful.
Tell us about now that you've mentioned it again.
Sorry.
The new book.
So my new book is called This Green and Pleasant Land, and it's out the 13th of June, 2 weeks, and it's about a Muslim family living in an English village, a fictional village called Babel's End. Think of kind of West Dorset, and the Muslim family living there. Bilal, the main character, Bill, as he's known, obviously, is kind of removed from his traditions, removed from his culture. He's what you would call a coconut, and I'm allowed to say that. And he's not lived. He doesn't have a very strong relationship with his mum, and he feels quite guilty about that. So he's called back to Birmingham when she's on her deathbed, and she's worried for his soul. She's worried about his faith, his lack of Pakistaniness. And she asks him to go back to his village and build a mosque. And so that's where, I guess, comedy ensues. More dramedy than it is comedy.
I mean, there's nothing like an Asian mum guilt.
It's true, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Story going.
So I'm very excited about that. It's a bit different to Sophia Khan books, but I think it kind of speaks to our time. And hopefully it's entertaining as well as.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Brilliant. I think we have time for one more question. Is there anyone on this side of the room? No?
Mine's a short one. Will there be a film?
Will there be a film?
Well,
UK character in the film.
More than happy to help out with that. So yeah.
I hope so, but these things take ages, and they start and then they stop. So it's fingers crossed. It would be good to see on screen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, fingers crossed.
And just in relation to that,
Just so everyone can hear you.
Just going on from that, I've read both the books and I absolutely love them.
Thank
I just can't wait for the third one. I just wanted to find out, are you working on other projects now, or will there be a third?
Oh no, so the third one is out in 2 weeks, and then.
As in the series?
Oh, and this Sophia Khan. Not soon, not anytime soon, because I'm started work on my fourth book, and I've just had an idea for my fifth book.
Well, you can do a Helen Fielding and come back to the characters in 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. I might do. I think there is definitely space for a third book.
Is it still in your mind that at some stage you could go back to it, or for the time being is that?
I think I wrote. I mean, the second book I wrote in the space of 9 months, with a deadline, publicity for the first book, and revisions on the first book, and it killed me. And so I'm kind of like, oh, I love you, but I don't want to see you ever again. One of those kind of relationships. And so but there is scope for it. And if I don't come up with a sixth idea, at least I have something to fall back on. So there we are. Sophia Khan's my plan B. Yeah.
I think on that note, I will bring this to an end. Thank you all for coming. So we'll have a book signing now. So if you wander out there, we'll direct you.
And there's food as well.
Yep.
Books in here now.
Books in here now. Okay.
We've moved everything around.
We've moved everything around. So books in here. We'll have food in a bit. If you're fasting, the fast opens just
9,
after
9, 10, I think.
Something like that. Okay. If you're not fasting, you can.
Okay, you don't all have to be Muslim today. Yeah.
And if you didn't get a chance to ask a question, obviously, come up and talk to our panellists. In the meantime, if you can join me in thanking Nina, Sophia and Saima, and if you can give us a very special round of applause for Aisha, who's so wonderful.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for chairing. I'm going to do a little bit of a sort of sales pitch on the books. So this is a present. You get to take this home, but if you'd like Aisha to sign it, then she would probably be delighted to do so. We've also got, we had some people talking about the sequel. We've got the sequel here. I haven't got my glasses on, I keep saying that today. I think it gets sold for $7.99, but because I didn't get a float, we're selling it for $5.
There we are.
So if you've read the first book and you really want to read the second book, that is here. Please only have £5 because I've got no change. Sophia is one of the contributors, as she's already mentioned, to Not About the Burqa. This retails at $14.99, and previous comments about float are still valid. So we're selling this for £10. And again, cash only, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm doing a second prize right now.
Sorry, I'm running off by you.
I was like,
yeah. You can dinner, aren't you? You know me, I don't do dinner with you guys. You're there. What are you doing there?
I'm actually quite interested in grabbing your book.
Everyone has a book. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Hello again.
Hello.
I'm just going to quickly say goodbye to Simon. She's running off. Bye, love. See you next time. Lovely to see you. Thank you for today. I'm so sorry. Oh, lovely.
Perfect. Lovely. I'll see you there.
Okay. Oh, excellent.
Basically, I think it's 204 or something like that. Yeah, I kind of did it sort of middle and towards the end of the book. So, yeah. Oh yes, no, I'd love to. I'd love to read your
Secrets of the Henna.
Secrets of the Henna. Okay.
Sorry, I think there's a queue. Yeah.
Grab one of these as well. So
But
read on the train going back. Thanks.
Where do you live? You got bus?
So I'm kind of West London, so I'm very close to. So I live in Leyland Village. I don't know if you know it. It's basically between Shepperton and Staines.
Okay.
Very close to Heathrow, because I do most of my work is abroad now.
Oh, thank you so much. Nice. You're doing a lot in the States?
So a lot in the States. It's my this is
absolutely.
My first bit in the Caribbean.
Thank you.
But actually, while I'm there, I then get to fly to LA and do a little bit there. So that's quite exciting.
Absolutely. Who do I make it out?
How about yourself?
I'm a full-time writer,
full-time writer.
and I spend most of my time doing school visits. I'm a girls' rights activist.
Oh, okay, all right.
So that's where the book came in, the forced marriage one.
Yeah.
And I'm a political activist, really.
Yeah.
Always wanted to be a writer, so I'm combining the two.
Sure.
So, as I said, it's a reflection of my political activism. I really wanted to be the next Roald Dahl, but they weren't having it.
They weren't having it.
So I had to write the forced marriage book. They were like, this is what you can do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Are you on?
Who do I make it out to?
Okay, no worries.
F-H.
to meet you.
Nice to
You've
meet
been
you.
such an idol of mine. Come on to breakfast.
Actually, they're over here. Invite me up. I'll come up.
I would love to. I would love
It's
to.
amazing, yeah.
You
We can do a reading up there or something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll tell you what, I have young people here. So, it's a key stage 2, which is, I think, way below all of this, but my son got diagnosed a year and a half ago with type 1 diabetes, and I wanted to get a book into the school system, which is now going to happen. Oh, have you? Well, so it's called Bionic T1D.
Oh, brilliant. Good
And
timing.
it's about a little kid who ends up with type 1. Please, it's on Amazon. It's only just been released, so and it's basically to educate kids. Like as you were saying, it's better if it's at school age. Bionic T1D, because he refuses to say type 1 diabetes. So my son gets asked, he goes, "I got T1D." So I'm with Reading Planet, Rising Stars, Reading Planet. Those are two guys. He is now 12. He was diagnosed at 10. And I initially kind of wrote it as a kind of therapy for myself, but it ended up as a little story.
Thank you.
You know, that'd be amazing. We actually have a really big school program.
Okay, fabulous.
So this year we're only like a couple of weeks away now.
Sure.
But I've made a note of it.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
I think next year because we do loads of primary schools and we do loads of school visits.
That'd be
and all that kind
incredible.
of thing.
It's just to educate young kids about it.
There we are. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
I'll get in touch with them
Fabulous.
once this comes out.
Sure.
Okay. And it'd be good if we could do something like that.
That'd be lovely. Anytime.
Yeah, and you can see Rajasthan and all the food.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
It's really lovely to meet you.
Same here.
Lovely to see you.
Good luck with your festival.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. All the best.
Who do I make this out to?
That's okay, no worries. Oh,
Nice to see you.
S-H-A-H-E.
Oh no, I know. I was sad about it because, like I said, I have a lot of Muslim friends that to me it was very disappointing. But that's just them. There were idiots in every community, and those were the idiots in the community. Nice.
There we are. Thank you so much. Cheers. Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who do I make it out to?
I know.
Is that K-A-B-I-T-A?
Please don't bother. We're idiots, so nothing to do with the general community.
And I appreciate
I'm the third chapter. I can do it on there or
Oh,
just on
absolutely. Absolutely. I think all the different communities need to.
Thank you. Cheers. Hello.
Thank you. Yes,
Nabila, did you say?
Bionic.
Oh, no, it's not.
I'm not selling it. I just want to talk.
Sorry for my
Any money that
handwriting.
is made from it is going to go to the diabetes charity.
Well, I mean,
Thank you. If my son got diagnosed.
it's so close. Yeah, so close. Thank you. Hello.
the old Labour government. Press officer for the Labour Party. When you see people from Parliament, you start talking code. Brown was
It's not type 1, it's not reversed.
and then I got the book deal just as we lost the election.
Yeah, type 2 initially.
Yeah, I was only going to take a year out.
But it's been great. I love it.
So I haven't gone back. And then I was part of David Miliband's camp.
Not in France, no. Great. But I'd love to, because I spent a lot of time in France.
I'm still out here.
Which department do you work in? Yeah, everyone loves it. Who do I make it out to? Okay, you're going to have to say as well, that's okay.
How do you do?
Oh, okay.
Love it.
Well, it's still home secretary.
I've only just,
Please don't apologize.
There we are. Thank you.
I know, but they feel very real and they obviously have issues, whatever.
That's fine, I don't mind.
Thank you. I literally panicked. That's when I
Of course,
panicked.
N-I-N-A,
But I couldn't believe that my instincts kicked in. I just went for him, which normally actually I would think I wouldn't do. So it was great that I did.
There we are. Thank you.
Yeah. You
Hello.
did, yeah. So, but no, please don't apologize for that. I was saying to that lovely lady also.
Okay, yeah.
She's saying that it's there are idiots in every community, and I just came across those two idiots, and they were like,
You know how
yeah.
So I was going to say, the issue is that they have one ethnic character.
Yeah.
Everybody claims it.
Yeah, they do.
I wrote my book, and everybody's like, well, no, that's
It
our
was a
nation.
really lovely event.
It's
Yeah.
expensive. I know. It's because we haven't got representation.
Exactly.
Barcelona.
Yeah.
Missed me for
That's the
Barcelona.
bit that was upsetting, but hey ho, I've come across
who do I make
most
it
of my
out to?
industry, I can guarantee it's anyhow.
Yes, you did, yeah.
I was just imagining she's like good at what's
We'll have to do it. Oh, lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. It still works, doesn't it? It still works. It's so cool. Good fun.
Hiya.
It's amazing, like that timeless,
Thank you, yeah.
kind of like, that sounds like
Yeah.
M-I-N.
Oh, no worries, yeah,
We're just chilling now.
We're just chilling.
We're waiting for the food.
And then run.
Hello. Hi.
Oh dear. No. It's fine. Hi, how are you doing?
That's always what you want to hear.
Not at the moment. I have been asked,
do
but
I
not at the
make
moment.
it up?
I'm actually filming Death in Paradise right now. Great show. It's a
So
great
are you a
show.
detective?
So no, I
Fun as well, yeah?
You're not meant to know, so don't say it. I'm playing his love interest, so I'm going to do that.
Good. Hello. Oh, oh yeah. Sorry. Who do I make it up to? Very long email. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sorry, just 2 minutes. First time.
Very odd experience. I kind of had a fun kid. Not really. But it was great. Or you could put it I'll just go and get a photo and I'll be right back.
Because then they get the money direct. Here they triple the price. For the first. The handbag. But then I got married before. I never found I just found the and as I say, I bought them
I will, definitely. Oh, yeah, of course you can. Oh, didn't know that.
Hello, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah. Who do I make it out to?
Rubina. R-U-B-I-N-A. We were just thinking,
Sophia.
comes out.
Just generally fine? Yeah. One hope. Yeah. Hello, very patient queuer. What name?
I'm one of the contributors. Mariam is the editor. I'm Sophia. I'm one of the contributors. Mariam is the editor. Named at the back. Okay. Thank you. Cheers.
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
There we are. Thank you.
Me again, sorry.
Yes. Oh, lovely. Sorry. Bad memory. There we are. Thank you so much. Cheers. Hello. Thank you for coming, guys. So nice of you. Bye. Sorry, you didn't make it out. May. Yeah. And well, thank you very much.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Cheers. Hello. Julia.
Yeah.
It's sad, isn't it? But we're getting there. It's very sweet to write it.
There we are. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, hello. My only male viewer. Oh, thank you. That's so nice. Oh, wonderful.
Oh yeah. Oh, then it's a second thought.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas the White House is a straight symbol. You know, it's the work.
Diversity. That's what we're going for, right?
Whatever. So regardless.
Oh, thank you.